It's a big week for Nvidia as the AI-focused company gets set to report third quarter results after the bell tomorrow. Shares of the chipmaker are up nearly 240% since the start of the year. Its blockbuster earnings report back in May also added to some of the upward momentum that we're seeing play out in the stock. Well, our next guest, though, isn't expecting a slowdown anytime soon, calling Nvidia best positioned at this point. We want to bring in Ruben Roy. He's Stifel Applied Technology Analyst here for more. And Ruben, when you talk about the fact that Nvidia is best positioned, what do you see that upside potential looking like then as we look ahead to 2024?
Well, the rest of the, and thanks for having me. The rest of 24, we're looking for a beat and raise again. So we saw that in May, as you pointed out, and then again with the July quarter when Nvidia reported in August. And we haven't seen any slowdown to sort of the momentum that NVIDIA is seeing on orders for their high-end chips called the H100 for large language model training networks. And we expect that to continue into year end and into next year. There's been some supply constraints that have impacted, in our view, some of the sales that NVIDIA could have had this year. And we expect those supply constraints to start to ease as we get into the end of the year. And so you put all that together and we think we have several quarters ahead at a minimum where we have quite robust results coming up.
And so additionally here, when you think about some of that AI demand, where do you expect it to roll in from, even more so internationally, given some of the curbs that have been put in place? Nvidia, other chip makers have had to make sure that they navigate around successfully.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. That's going to be a focus point, of course, on the call. So increased export restrictions and, coming down to even some of the chips that some analysts and investors did not expect the U.S. government to put restrictions on. Since then, there's been some chatter that NVIDIA has come up with a number of SKUs that are, again, underneath the specifications that the government is worried about. We'll see how that plays out. At a certain point, I think there's a spirit of the law, type of case to be made for, hey, we shouldn't be shipping some types of technology to some countries. So we'll see how NVIDIA, comments on those questions. I would say, though, in terms of demand, the company, did file post the restriction announcement, and so that they're not expecting any near-term impacts to their financials. And our checks out in the channel would suggest that that is the case. We think, as I said, that there's quite a bit of demand globally, ex-China. So certainly in the U.S., the big cloud service providers, you folks were talking about Microsoft, and we think that's going to continue to be a very big opportunity for NVIDIA going forward. But even outside of the U.S. in areas like Europe, Japan, South Korea, you name it, there's a lot going on with AI. And like you said as well, NVIDIA remains, in our view, the best way to kind of position for that growth.
Ruben, you mentioned Microsoft there, and more specifically what we've seen play out over the last 72 hours now that Sam Altman is on board here with Microsoft. There were reports, of course, that he was looking to raise funding here for a new chip venture that would rival NVIDIA. How do you see that competition then stacking up with Altman now at Microsoft, between Microsoft and NVIDIA?
Yeah, Microsoft last week at Ignite actually announced two of their own semiconductor devices that they've been working on for quite a while. And, I think we're going to see a lot of that, going forward. No one wants to be beholden to one vendor. And so over the next, several years, I think you will see increasing competition. AMD, in our view, is the second best to NVIDIA from a hardware perspective, having their MI series of GPUs launching at the end of this year and into next year. And if you look at that company, they're looking for around $2 billion in MI300 related sales next year. That's a pretty small percentage of overall AI GPU revenue. We're estimating somewhere around $60 billion for data center revenues for NVIDIA next year. So yes, I think there will be competition, and Sam Altman, potentially going to Microsoft and leading the charge, to try to come up with some lower cost chips or what have you. I think we'll see that happen, but I'm not expecting that to be meaningfully negative in terms of competition anytime soon. I would also point out that Google is on their 5th generation TPU, which is an AI specific chip that they've been working on. And even there, Google is a very big customer of NVIDIA. So I think that this is a very big market, and NVIDIA is, again, the best technology for the market at this point.
Is there an acquisition target out there for NVIDIA that is perhaps synonymous with an OpenAI, even if NVIDIA does have their own partnerships to advance their generative AI ambitions here in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brad. So I think, one of the other announcements that came out of Ignite that we thought was very interesting was the so-called AI Foundry that NVIDIA is doing with Microsoft. And that's software, and that's embedding software layers, NVIDIA's models for AI, kind of their operating system, which is called CUDA, and, kind of entrenching themselves into the AI offerings that are coming, not just from Microsoft, but enterprise customers, right? So now we're starting to see the broadening and some ROI potential for customers. SAP was named MDocs and others, and so I think from a software perspective, that's the next area potentially for NVIDIA to expand into. They've got a cloud DGX offering where they're selling capacity of GPU capacity, and moving forward, they can, in our view, start to really ramp up revenue if they're able to get into further into the software ecosystem. So that's where I would be looking for M&A, and certainly would make sense from a longer term perspective.
Ruben, always a pleasure to get some of your insights here, and thanks for kicking off the trading week here with us. Ruben Roy, Stifel, Applied Technology Analyst. You've got a busy week ahead, and then holiday as well. So all the
Happy
best.
Thanksgiving. Thanks.
Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks.